And have you decided on a location for the next Christmas special? Are we going to be back in Poplar or maybe somewhere exciting?
We are staying in Poplar. We are not going anywhere cold, we're not going anywhere wet, we're not going anywhere far away. It's very much Poplar based. I'm writing it at the moment, and there will be snow and there will be tinsel and there will be trees and there will be Christmas dinner at Donata's house, and beyond that it's a secret.
Other than babies?
I think the baby count when I left my desk this morning was running at 2, but we'll see how I get on because I haven't finished writing it yet.
I'd love to know a bit more about why you chose some of the conditions and illnesses you featured in this year's show. We've had hemangioma, congenital rubella syndrome, diphtheria, fistula, hemochromatosis. Do you get a medical dictionary out? Or?
I get medical records out at the beginning of every writing season for me, which always begins in about November, December. I go through the medical records for, it's now Tower Hamlets, it used to be Poplar. Tower Hamlets is Poplar and Stepney. And I go through all the statistics. That's where diphtheria came from, certainly. Sometimes it's inspired by something in real life. My own son had a hemangioma on his scalp. It was just here above his ear. It was quite large. And I was a young mum, a new mum, and I could not believe how many people pointed at my baby and said, "Ooh, what's that?" It was actually quite disturbing, and most pictures of him at that age, sort of 6-7 months, he's got a beret on the side of his head. He looks like in French fancy dress. But it's something that's very, very common. It's 99% of the time entirely harmless, and it fades. Now, I grew up with a severely disabled sibling, so when I was told this blip on my son's head was temporary and harmless and would not disfigure him permanently, I went with it. I had an otherwise completely healthy baby, so that did come from personal experience. And we had the most wonderful post back afterwards of people who either had hemangiomas themselves, or strawberry marks as they were called, and they faded, or people whose babies have them now and now feel it will be much easier to explain to people what that little mark is on their baby's cheek or scalp or perhaps hand or shoulder. And I love doing that, so that was definitely personal experience.
And this year has had a very strong, we've always been very strong on vaccination and Call the Midwife, but this year in particular has had a lot of that. Is that something that's important to you?
I think it's important to the world of Call the Midwife at that time. When I first started writing Call the Midwife, we did stories about polio, for example, and TB. And when I go through the medical records now for 1965, 1966, it's not possible for me to do polio stories because polio has been virtually eradicated. Vaccinations are not perhaps as valued or respected these days as they were then, but they were bringing about real change and a real sense of confidence and security in people's well-being and in terms of resistance to disease. So then it becomes dramatic when the new norm is tampered with in some way. So it is important to me, but one of the interesting things is just past week, episode 6, we had a story about a baby born with rubella syndrome. He was blind, brain damaged, and had a very serious heart lesion, only lived for a few weeks. Very few people even know what that is now. And at the time, 1965, it wasn't possible to be vaccinated against rubella. Therefore, vaccination was never mentioned as part of our story. But it reminds people of things that don't really happen very often anymore. And so it's an unspoken nod towards vaccination, not a spoken nod, because we're not here to preach and we're not here to try and change modern habits. But if it causes reflection and creates discussion, I think that can be a fine thing for a drama to do.
And fistula in this series, you'd never seem to shy away from some of the, lesser discussed aspects of female health.
Absolutely. I suppose we've been doing this for quite some years. Now, obviously, I'm a woman. I have a female body. I've been enthralled by it, enlivened by it, inspired by it, and embarrassed by it. And I think there are some women, especially older women, who find it difficult to go to the doctor to talk about their womb, their waterworks, all of these things. But it's very much part of women's experience. And again, drama is often about conflict or about things that we find difficult. Fistula is very extreme. It tends to occur only in the developing world. It's fortunately not something that happens in the developed world in the 21st century because we know more. But it does happen in less developed countries, perhaps where women don't have access to properly skilled midwifery. But you do hear time and time again, we get feedback from patients for whom our stories have created a dialogue. Fistula is very rare, but certainly there have been other things, simple incontinence. Or even this week, Sister Frances was shown as having severe period pains that she felt she couldn't discuss with anyone, because particularly at that time you're expected to get on with it, and Nurofen wasn't wasn't available in the in the chemist on the corner. So again, lots of people were tweeting and saying, I feel seen. Sister Frances has got painful periods, and I think that's great. I really do.